If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another episode of Under the Radar for you guys. This time I'm talking about 4 albums that came out on St. Paddy's Day on the 17th of March here in the States. And, well, we got a very eclectic list of albums to talk about. Kicking things off with a bit of an underground one. Well, actually a lot of an underground one. We have a debut death metal band, Sepulcrum, with Lamentations of Immolated Souls. So yeah, I believe this is a Chilean death metal band, and I was curious to check this one out considering there was one band compared to them, and that was the almighty Morbid Angel. And, well, the best way to describe this album is what would happen if you mashed early Deicide and Altars of Madness era Morbid Angel, and you just put them together, and you get this band and album. Like, there is so much Altars of Madness influence all throughout, but you get some awesome triplet chugs that make me think of the early Deicide stuff, like the self-titled Legion, Once Upon the Cross, Serpents of the Light, like the old school, like the 90s era Deicide stuff mashed with Altars of Madness. And even the production is very old school, very raw, very in your face. However, I would say a complaint that I had about this album is that sometimes it's like this album has a weird flow. Like the first half, you start off with a long track and then the songs just get shorter and shorter. And then the second half of the album comes in where you get a couple longer tracks and more standard song lengths, like 3.5, 4 minutes. So I think they could have made some changes to the flow of the album by starting off with the faster, shorter tracks and then just progressively get more experimental and more involved with the songwriting in terms of the flow of the album. And even some production inconsistencies happen here and there. But other than that, this was a pretty damn good debut. I give this an 8 out of 10. So for fans of 90s era Deicide and Altars of Madness era Morbid Angel, you will definitely enjoy this, because I know I did. But now on to the second album out of this week's Under the Radar, and that is an album that I actually got referred to thanks to some people that I get emails from, a PR company, Breaking the Law PR, Nikki Law, who's technically like my boss. One of her clients sent over some promo downloads for some music, and I got one from this band, and I thought, why don't I check them out? We have Night Demon with Outsider. So this is actually a bigger band on Century Media Records, but I'd never heard of them until getting this email to check this album out, and I checked it out, and wow, this is some like old school heavy metal, like new wave of British heavy metal, maybe even a little bit of 70s metal like Black Sabbath and early Judas Priest, but you also get a good chunk of Iron Maiden and Diamond Head on here. But I like how this album was pretty structured. It's like after the kind of needless intro and you just get right into the real meat and potatoes that is this album. I like how the album flows. It's like you get standard songs, 3.5 minutes, and then they break them up every couple of tracks with longer songs. And like the song, I'm trying to remember the title of it, Become the Demon, Beyond the Demon, something like that. I'll have to look it back up. But there was a 6.5 minute track in the middle of the album that was quite doom-laden, like Dio era, or even Tony Martin era Black Sabbath, because it is a little bit dark, but it's also very bombastic. And then even the closing track kind of perfectly encapsulates everything this album has. There's even, at times, a little bit of like a old school Metallica vibe. Like, there was even like a track that reminded me of Iron Maiden meets Enter Sandman a little bit, because the rhythm and some of the riffs reminded me of Enter Sandman, but then it gets into some Iron Maiden parts. But yeah, overall, I really, really enjoyed this one. I give this one an 8.5 out of 10. For fans of classic new wave of British heavy metal, 70s metal, and maybe even a little bit of old Metallica, I think you will dig this one as well. But now on to the third and penultimate album for this week's Under the Radar, and that is Foretoken with Triumphs. So yeah, this is a sophomore effort from a band that, if I'm correct, I believe this band is from the States, but they have a couple of international session players. The biggest of them all, Hannes Grossman on drums. Of course, Hannes formerly of Necrophagist, Obscura, currently in Triptychon, also in Alkaloid, his solo projects. I think Eternity's End. Like, he's a very eclectic drummer. And this is more symphonic, melodic death metal with moments of classic death metal and black metal kind of intermingled a little bit. It's like this album, I think, is like the perfect sampler platter of melodic death metal and even a little bit of 90s era death. Like, there were moments where it made me think of 90s era death in some of the riffs and the tempos. But yeah, the symphonic element is mostly in the background, not so much out in the forefront. This is mostly just straight up mellow death, but with influences coming from classic death metal and black metal, just a little bit. Hell, they even do a cover of Naglfar that was really, really good. But I just love everything about this album. There's some brutality to it, there's some beauty to it, and there's some somberness to it. And it just made for an overall thrilling roller coaster ride of emotions and adventure when it came down to the music. So overall, this could make the album of the year list. I give this one a 9 out of 10. I fucking loved this album, and I might actually pick this one up here very soon. But now we get to the fourth and final album, and that is Redemption with I Am the Storm. Now we're getting prog metal. And I remember checking out their last album. I believe it was called, like, not their last album, but their 2016 album, like The Age of Loss, something like that. But I remember that had Ray Alder from Fate's Warning, and that was actually the last album he did. And now they got Tom England from Evergrey, which I'm like, I will take that, because I am a pretty big Evergrey fan. Like, their last few albums have been absolute monstrous prog metal albums with hints of power metal. Here, I wouldn't say there's really any power metal influence on here at all. This is straight up progressive metal, but it's fucking heavy. Like, you get some of the heaviest prog metal riffs of the modern day on this album, but of course you get some classic nods to old school prog. Hell, they even do a cover of a Genesis track, Turn It On Again, I think it was called, and that was a fun cover. And I like how this album's structured. Like, it starts off with a couple of shorter tracks, kind of like standard song structures, but then as the album progresses, it gets more progressive and it gets more experimental a little bit. But yeah, just the heft of this album, the production. Yes, it's clean, but again, with progressive metal, it has to sound clean for the most part. Otherwise, it would just feel a little bit strange. But yeah, everything was pretty much even kiltered. Like, you even get some great bass moments here and there. The drum work was phenomenal. Like I said, the guitars, the leads on here were tastefully done. And the riffs. You get some chunkified riffs on here at times. And Tom's vocals. Absolutely fantastic. So overall, this is a possible album of the year top 10 contender. Maybe top 5 right now. 9.5 out of 10 for this one. This was almost perfect. Because holy shit, the songwriting on this album was just absolutely beautiful and just gorgeous. Absolutely love this. But of course, those are just my opinions on all these albums. What did you guys think of all these albums that I talked about? Of course, links to the albums will be in the description box for you guys to check out, and when you check them out, come back here and let me know your thoughts. But until next time, you people out there, keep your horns high and your dreams wet. Why did I do that?